They tried to shame me in front of my whole neighborhood, calling my little boy's sandbox a hazard, but when I exposed their lies, the room turned silent. That's when I realized this fight was bigger than sand, and I wasn't backing down. My hands shook as HOA Karen planted a red tag on Bram's sandbox, declaring hazard while neighbors whispered, filming, and my son's shovel clattered helplessly. Edward's sunlight sharp as glass, Eagle River hissing, HOA board-lined jurors outside 412 Juniper Switch Road. Bram wore his dinosaur hat, smiling until the tag ripped. His smile stuttered, then vanished. The word hazard looked bigger than mountains shadowing our cul-de-sac. Before we continue, please drop a like and comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Australia, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back, tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. I stepped forward, voice cracking, asking for reasons, measurements, anything. Marceline's clipboard clicked cuffs. She said drainage risk, vermin attraction, community standards, insurability, negligence, removal. Neighbors pretended shrubs needed attention. Someone laughed, another closed blinds. Bram asked gentle whether dinosaurs were hazards. My breath tasted like pennies, coffee, and anger. Marceline pointed at our gravel border, calling it non-compliant. Her pearl earrings flashed like beacons. She demanded a signature. I took pen, hearing Leora's warnings. Laura, my sister, said I underestimate storms. HOA storms start with paper and end with auctions. Her caution echoed as Bram hugged my knee, trembling. I remembered financial potholes, late fees, one car dying, rent hikes, daycare swelling like bruises. Losing the sandbox felt like losing comfort we barely afforded. I asked for a hearing. Marceline smirked at policy codes, promising consequences. Her smirk sharpened when Bram's lip wobbled. The tag fluttered like condemning flag. Then Bram whispered, heartbreakingly loud, that Karen stole his beach. The cul-de-sac froze. Marceline's smile evaporated. My pen hovered. A camera beeped, and everything tilted. Before that day, Bram and I built Sandbox together, hauling cedar boards from Bargain Barn, scooping river sand, measuring corners while snowmelt perfumed Edward's air. Leora lived 2 streets over on Thistle Run, apartment 19C, babysitting Bram while I worked nights unloading heavy pallets at Luttrell Foods near the interstate. Money whispered constantly, debtor letters arriving with eagle stamps, late notices printed red. Still, the Sandbox made Bram brave, patient, curious, gentle, and shared anyway. Neighbors grumbled about kids, noise, chalk dust, bikes. Mostly they grumbled about rents rising while HOA fees rose higher. Resentment fertilized many petty rule gardens. Marceline slid into power after a special election nobody attended. She smiled like a realtor sign. Her newsletters sounded soft while her citations cut ice. She called herself safety's defender. She photographed mulch depths and measured mailbox heights. Once, she fined a family for a lavender door, disrupting uniformity, strictly. I ignored small storms until notices stacked like shingles. Leora circled dates with purple marker, urging attendance, reminding me showing up costs less than repairs. Bram pretended the Sandbox a lunar base. His dinosaur hat became a helmet. He invited neighbors, even the shy Caldwell boy. Laughter softened the cul-de-sac. Then a sprinkler head burst near the Sandbox, flooding border. I fixed it with tape and sandbags, promising repairs Friday. Marceline photographed Tuesday, declaring negligence. That night, a certified letter demanded removal by sunrise, plus fines. I watched Bram sleeping on the couch fort, and felt something dangerous wake fully. Morning, I met Marceline on the sidewalk with coffee and calm, asking for the appeal form. She offered a smile shaped like a warning triangle. She spoke about liability during spring thaw, about precedent, about attracting bears. I glanced at Bram tracing rivers in sand, hearing claws behind those words. I filled the form anyway, handwriting stubborn, requesting a formal hearing before the board at Singletree Clubhouse. She circled fines doubling every 7 days, officially. Luttrell Foods granted me one afternoon off. My supervisor, Gerald Pike, raised an eyebrow, joked about fighting City Hall. then slipped me his old briefcase. Leora arrived with photocopies of covenants, highlighter stripes like speedways. She found clauses about play structures, setbacks, screening, drainage. She muttered enforcement seemed strangely selective. We knocked on doors, asking neighbors to sign support. Some nodded politely, others whispered fearing retaliation. The Caldwell boys' mother signed, hands shaking with bravery. Anonymously, someone pushed a flyer under my door listing Bram's perceived nuisances: squeals, toy trucks, chalk galaxies. Nuisance was starred, underlined, stabbing me repeatedly, again. I breathed snow air, counted to 50, then coached Bram to invite everyone for a cleanup Saturday. He agreed, smiling, because 7-year-olds choose community naturally. Saturday brought gloves, wheelbarrows, and cocoa. We fixed sprinklers properly, built a French drain, topped the sandbox with fresh mesh. Laughter loosened tight shoulders everywhere. Marceline arrived late, heels clicking, photographing improvements without speaking. She said pleasantly that unauthorized improvements remained violations. Leora asked which covenant clause forbade generosity today. At the Singletree Clubhouse, folding chairs faced a long table where board members arranged waters like trophies. Marceline sat centered, pearls stacked neatly like punctuation. Gerald's briefcase clicked open. I spread photos of repairs, neighbor signatures, and the covenant page allowing play structures under 4 feet with screened edges, drainage. Leora spoke first, gentle but surgical, asking for inspection protocols. The secretary, Mr. Quaid, shuffled papers, muttering about consistency. Someone coughed. A heater rattled audibly. I explained Bram's history. Therapy success through play, routines anchored by sand textures, bedtime after digging. The sandbox wasn't decoration, it was medicine and community. Marceline countered with photos of puddles and raccoon prints. She said optics mattered, donors disliked disorder, insurance hated surprises. We must avoid headlines, hazard spread. Leora asked about comparable violations. Mr. Quaid admitted 2 other sandboxes existed, both larger. Their owners received friendly guidance emails, not red tags or fines. A murmur rolled through the room like tires on gravel. Marceline's smile cooled. She blamed new enforcement energy. I asked why energy skipped richer corners. The treasurer, Ms. Wilmain, cleared her throat and said policy couldn't be selective. Marceline interrupted, declaring executive discretion. Leora requested the discretion clause. Silence settled. A realtor stood, adjusting his scarf, declaring a listing next door needed tranquility. Buyers disliked kid clusters. Property values were delicate. Enforcement protected everyone's inheritance. Bram gripped his dinosaur hat. Anger crystallized into strategy. I requested recorded minutes and a vote. Marceline nodded, expression unworried, and slowly raised her gavel. It should have ended there, but Friday morning brought a new notice. Unapproved drainage stones visible from street, subject to fine. My stomach folded carefully. Outside, snow needled the parking lot. Leora pressed her lips, then handed me a printout, an email between Marceline and the realtor about curb appeal metrics. It mentioned calming the street narrative before a weekend showing. One bullet said minimizing toy-forward visuals. Another promised executive tranquility, right beside our fence, boldly. I felt humiliated, like my father when layoffs arrived. Rage rose, then steadied into purpose. Leora photographed the printout beside the red tag, timestamping context. At home, Bram arranged dinosaurs in a line facing the window, as if defending Sandbox with prehistoric patience. I promised him I'd find another way. Next morning, 2 HOA board members arrived with a contractor, wheeling a pallet jack and empty bins. Bram's lip quivered. I asked for additional day. Marceline said deadlines matter. Neighbors peeked from curtains. The contractor apologized softly while preparing to scoop sand. Leora whispered, "Film everything." My hands stopped shaking. I called County Health, asking about sandbox hazards. The woman said guidelines existed, but removal wasn't required with lids, mesh, maintenance. She honestly sounded surprised. We printed guidelines, taped them beside the red tag. Marceline rolled her eyes, saying county guidance wasn't covenant law. Several neighbors started recording, looking uneasy. Ms. Wilmain stepped from her sedan and announced a board meeting regarding selective enforcement claims. Marceline stiffened. The contractor killed his engine. Bram smiled hopefully. That evening, the clubhouse smelled like dust and peppermint tea. More neighbors came than chairs allowed. Phones faced forward. Bram sat beside Leora, drawing mountains. Ms. Wilmaine opened with process, fairness, transparency, and liability. She invited statements. I presented county guidance, photographs, and realtor email. A ripple moved through jackets. Marceline's voice brightened. She called the email brainstorming. Property values demanded serenity. Rules were neutral. Enforcement appeared unequal because resources were limited and complaints prioritized. Leora asked how complaints were gathered. Mr. Quaid admitted most came from an anonymous sender named Quiet Creek, whose attachments often mirrored Marceline's own photographs exactly. A hush fell heavy. Someone whispered wow. Even Gerald from Luttrell Foods leaned forward, jaw set. Bram squeezed my hand, Sand still dusting his fingernails. The board voted to pause enforcement for 2 weeks, review Sandbox cases, and solicit public comments. Marceline abstained, eyes narrowed, relief tasted like orange lights. Outside, neighbors congratulated Bram like a tiny mayor. The Caldwell boy high-fived him. I exhaled clouds, thanked Leora, promised cocoa. Snowflakes sparked under the lamps. At dawn, our fence was spray-painted hazard in letters. The Sandbox lid cracked. Bram whispered, "Did a bear write?" I hugged him until shivers passed. I reported vandalism. A deputy took notes, glancing at red tags, whispering about neighborhood politics. Leora photographed everything, then checked security cameras facing our driveway. She froze the screen. A figure in navy coat, clipboard in hand, lingered by our fence at 3 a.m. Deputy leaned closer, requesting a copy. The next week, my landlord, Mr. Velton, taped a notice about annual rent adjustment, numbers marching upward. He apologized, citing taxes, maintenance, and market forces. At Luttrell Foods, Gerald warned overtime would shrink. The distributor contract changed. I counted shifts like ration lanterns. Leora offered soup and kept Bram smiling. Quiet Creek posted again on the community board, calling Sandbox people irresponsible. Comments flared. Then a message arrived from Caldwell Boy's mother, requesting a secret meeting. We met at dusk beside the mail kiosks. She whispered realtor promised a finder's bonus if her property sold quickly. She felt sick about silence. She'd heard Marceline brag about curating the street's vibe. She'd seen the navy coat at 2 a.m. Fearing retaliation, she begged confidentiality. I promised protection. Leora drafted an affidavit. We notarized it at the grocery kiosk. I mailed copies. Bram drew dinosaurs guarding documents, teeth big as confidence, tails braided. That night, I found a note under our doormat reading move. Bram asked if move meant dance. I said maybe, taught steps until laughter returned. The deputy called saying the camera image was blurry. Still, timing mattered. He suggested contacting local news if selective enforcement continued. I wrote everything carefully. Ms. Wilmaine emailed requesting public testimony Thursday's review. She sounded apologetic. I sensed factions forming. Bram practiced saying please keep my sandbox, pronouncing sandbox sandbox. On Thursday morning, a snowplow clipped our mailbox and dumped slush into the sandbox. When I stepped outside, Marceline was already filming, smiling like weather. Thursday evening, the clubhouse overflowed. A reporter from Channel 8 leaned against trophy case. Bram wore his dinosaur hat like armor. Leora carried color folders. Ms. Wilmaine opened the floor. I spoke about fairness, guidance, and vandalism. Leora presented the affidavit. Murmurs built. The reporter's pen scratched like skates, softly. Marceline began with a smile, then cracked. She said parents manipulate optics, that toys creep into sightlines. She slipped, mentioning Quiet Creek personally. The room inhaled. Mr. Quaid cleared his throat and resigned as secretary, citing discomfort with anonymous complaint practices. The treasurer bowed her head. Ms. Wilmaine requested a recess. During recess, the reporter asked Bram what the sandbox meant. Bram said it was his moon, his castle, his quiet place. Quiet place lingered long. Back inside, Ms. Wilmaine proposed restoring our sandbox pending guidelines for play structures community-wide. She recommended banning anonymous complaints. The room exhaled. Marceline's jaw twitched. Then Marceline accused me of orchestrating vandalism for attention. Gasps sparked like static. The deputy stood in back, reminding everyone about the blurry Navy coat footage. Heat rose, but I spoke softly, describing Bram's therapy, our repairs, and the realtor email. I said values weren't numbers alone, values were children's rituals. The board voted 3-1 to restore the sandbox and draft procedures. Marceline voted no, recorded loudly. The reporter smiled, imagining the headline shape. After adjournment, someone shoved me from behind near door. I stumbled into the trophy case. Glass chimed. I spun, seeing only a navy sleeve disappearing. It should have ended there, but Friday morning brought a new notice. Unapproved drainage stones visible from street, subject to fine. My stomach folded carefully. Marceline stood outside measuring the French drain we'd built, counting stones like sins. She smiled at my confusion. She said rules protect harmony, voice glittering. Leora reminded me we'd asked for standardized guidelines. Ms. Wilmaine confirmed drafts were underway. Enforcement should pause. Still, the notice glowed like a stubborn ember. I emailed the reporter, attaching the new notice. She asked about pattern. I sent a timeline, highlighting each action, response, retaliation, then breath finally steadying. That afternoon, the deputy called. The Navy coat figure was realtor assistant. The assistant claimed neighborhood watch duties. My jaw tightened. Leora whispered, patterns speak louder. We planned a Saturday gathering, toy peace walk. Kids carrying buckets from driveway to sandbox, placing stones under supervision. Bram practiced a speech thanking neighbors protecting moons. Neighbors arrived with cocoa again. Even Gerald from Luttrell Foods brought muffins. The Caldwell boy handed me a drawing of a sandbox throne, eyes blurred. Marceline arrived with a cease directive. She claimed public nuisance. The reporter raised her mic. Ms. Wilmaine stepped between us, proposing guidelines and complaint tracking. Marceline called her power constitutional within covenants. Someone asked who Quiet Creek was. Silence shivered. The realtor assistant looked away. Bram lifted his dinosaur hat, crowning. A certified envelope thumped our mailbox. Intent to place lien for unpaid fines, including retroactive assessments. My hands steadied. I dialed an attorney immediately, now. The attorney, Ms. Banner, met me at a coffee shop, scanned documents fast, and smiled thinly. Selective enforcement, retaliatory fines, potential defamation. She loved patterns. She sent a letter demanding rescission of fines, preservation of evidence, disclosure of Quiet Creek accounts, and board training. She copied the insurer. Lawsuit language hummed. By Monday, Ms. Wilmaine emailed confirming fines withdrawn pending policy overhaul. Complaint anonymity suspended. A special election scheduled. Marceline resigned, citing family time and mischaracterizations. Bram and I rebuilt the lid, replaced cracked slats, and painted constellations inside. He declared it moonproof. The Caldwell boy crowned him Marshal of Sand. I delivered cocoa to neighbors who testified. We traded phone numbers and shovels. The realtor assistant handed me an apology, then quit. The listing expired. At the final meeting, the board adopted guidelines, setbacks, drainage standards, and complaint tracking. Children's spaces recognized as wellness supports. Applause felt like first sunshine. I raised my hand and asked one question. Would the board tag childhood as hazard again? Silence lasted, then laughter rolled. Even policies smiled awkwardly. Years passed. Bram outgrew the sandbox. I stored his dinosaur hat in Gerald's old briefcase. We moved across town. The cedar boards silvered into memory. I'm 50, telling you this decades later from a quieter street. When neighbors plan rules, I bring cocoa and covenants, asking who benefits from silence. Because the day an HOA Karen labeled my son's sandbox a hazard, she taught something sharp. Community isn't compliance alone. Community is courage, documented, defended.